right, we are live Saturday night. I'm just getting the links together. Looks like Twitch is going. Looks like YouTube's going. Oh, wow. Okay, there are some links for you. This is cool. All right. Well, it is Saturday evening, March 21st, 7:24 p.m. local time for me. Welcome to the AI First Show. My name is Stephen Barr. My colleague, Leonardo Gonzalez. We're both from the Trilogy AI Center of Excellence. Our goal is to learn AI best practices and to disseminate them, not just in our organization, but also to anyone who's interested. It is the Wild West of AI right now, and we're all trying to figure this out together. So any way we can help, or any way you can help us, we're open to it. So how are you doing, Leonardo? Hanging in there?
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. Lots of things going on. Been struggling with my health, but I'm recovering now from a very bad illness. But I am immersed in work. I'm doing really good meta work. I'm building the tools that I'm going to use to build. And one of the communities that I'm in that I met when I was in LA Tech Week that does a lot of AI film shared in one of the many groups there this interesting link about Reddit talking about requiring some kind of a proof of human presence in order to use Reddit.
I think, yeah, you shared that X link with me. I think we should definitely do a live react to it. Let's give a little bit of time for people to join in. Let's see. I will also share this out. Let's see. Actually, that's a good idea. I'm going to put this on my LinkedIn, see if anyone is joining in. Yeah, it is a wild time, huh?
Yeah, and it's part of like a general trend that I'm seeing in the erosion of privacy and anonymity, which is a little bit concerning. I have been seeing this in general in society, and then I've been seeing it in specific use cases that are especially troublesome. And so that's the kind of context and the lens under which I'm like reacting to this news and thinking about the implications.
All right, it is. I've posted this on my LinkedIn. Yeah, it's definitely a lot to go over. Let's share it onto our screen. I'll put it up. I'll put the tab on, and we'll just go over it. We can react to it in real time. I think this is fascinating. So let's have a look. This is Reddit CEO Steve Huffman. So
I'll give you an example of AI content that's totally acceptable. Translated content. Oh, sure. Like I'm a non-native speaker. Like help me write better. Like that's just the world we live in now.
Yeah.
And so for us, like Reddit is for humans. Like that is our platform. That is our product. It's human connection and community. So we're going to start actually talking about this more. So that this is a really apt time to have this conversation. This idea of humanness and human verification and what I call ass in seat. Like is there actually a human using Reddit right now, regardless of the tooling that you're using?
Yeah. How do you think about delivering on that?
I think the most light way, I think there's various technologies. The most lightweight way is with something like Face ID. Face ID or Touch ID, broadly, it's in the family of technology called passkeys, which I actually didn't appreciate about these like a year ago. They actually require human presence. Like a human has to touch or do or look at something. Yeah. And so that actually just proves that there's like a person there, or get you pretty far.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very lightweight and accepted. I think there's heavier versions like, the ID checking services, which we have to use, for regulations here or there.
Yeah.
And I think there's in between technologies like that the internet really needs, like third party, individual, no ID required, decentralized, like I don't want to say identity, but like information providers that there's a need for on the internet, because not just Reddit, every platform wants to know, is this a person? Now Reddit's version is this a person, but we don't want to know which person this is. Right? That's part of our promise to our users is we don't know your name, but we do want to know that you're a person. And so it'll be an evolution for us, I think, for a while, and probably every platform, I think, to find the right kind of middle ground here.
Vibe.co, where D2C brands, B2B.
Okay.
So
Let's
this
dissect that.
is so much. I feel like this is so big, and like on the one hand, what he said at face value, if we were to take it, like it sounds okay. It sounds like, oh, yeah, we're inundated with slop and bots and spam, and we need a way to fight back, and we want to have some kind of a filter to determine humans. People are complaining that X is overrun by OpenClaw content, and we've talked about AI slop for PRs in open source. And so this is part of an ongoing trend to find a way to combat the large scale of automated AI content. On the other hand, there are so many pitfalls and risks and slippery slopes in what he's saying. First of all, it's hard to conceive of the fact that you even could determine human presence without determining human identity. That's kind of fascinating. Like, it's an interesting thing to think about. But then he immediately goes to biometrics, right? Touch ID and Face ID, which maybe in the specific implementation of, iPhone or a MacBook or an Android that has a Touch ID, and if it is a passkey thing that obviously it's tied to your identity, that maybe the information that can travel can be de-identified somehow. But are you going to trust that happens? Are you going to trust that Reddit really wants to be altruistic and only fight spam, and they don't want to monetize on user data, and they don't want to identify, or not even identify, like you are this person, but attribute, And then the slippery slope that I'm talking about is, sure, maybe passkeys can be de-identified, but this is your face and your fingerprint you're talking about. People equate that with, this is my biometric data that I'm sending, which maybe in this case, you're not sending it directly. But I live in Colombia, where there's maybe even less privacy. There's a lot of like big brother kind of mentality for a lot of things. And it's very normal for a banking app or maybe even a food delivery app, or, to say, hey, we want to verify your identity. So hold up the phone to your face and move your face around, make sure it's not a photo, make sure we can capture your full facial profile. We're going to cross-reference that to some national database that I guess exists.
Or some third-party API that handles all this stuff.
And so like when he mentioned people federated identity stuff, like you remember the scandal with Meta, and I forget the name of the company that processed all their records, and that being leaked and monetized. So it is a very slippery slope to be thinking, we're going to require you to put your face in front of a sensor so that you can prove that you're a human, and then.
But trust us, we don't care.
We're not going to use that data in any way that identifies you. It's just to make sure that you're not a bot.
I'm going to play part of this again. Like it's so ridiculous. Let's have a look.
Touch
again.
or do or look at something, and so that actually just proves that there's like a person there, or get you pretty far.
Okay, so like when I hear this, I'm like, yeah, I want a pony, right? I want a race car. Like, this is such a childish approach to things, to say, like, okay, this is what we want. But it's like, okay, it's very clearly impossible to say, I want to prove that a human wrote this. Okay, maybe a human logged in, but then what's the next step? Do you film the human's thumbs on their phone?
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
then
interesting because he said that, like, yeah, you can use AI to help you write if English is not your native language and you want to translate, like, but he wants to make sure that there's a human involved. And I kind of sympathize with that to some degree, but I think that's even the wrong framing.
what if I say, well, I'm a moron in English, but I'm really smart in Spanish. So, while you're translating for me, bump it up a little bit, right? Is that accurate? Like, that's not.
Yeah.
I mean, even translation is
I think we need to look at, like, what is the real objective here, right? He wants to make sure that there's a human involved, which is like, why, right? Because we want to fight complete automation where people just unleash their open claws on commenting on forums to promote their stuff. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, people want to do that anyway, but do you want to make it hard for them, or do you want to have them involved? To what degree? What's the cognitive burden that you want, or what's the level of personal involvement that you want? And like, there's so many gray areas there that you have to think about. Like, what is it they really want, and what is it they really don't want, and how can you really ensure that, or can you?
I mean, what I come back to is, I think that the initial assumption that this rests on is that typing used to be expensive, and so why would you bother typing out something unless you were a human? Like, why would you write some Markov chain to go and make Reddit comments? Like, to what end? But now that it's such a big and valuable platform, and you want to, like, subtly say, oh, I used, I don't know, Mike's dental floss in the r/teeth subreddit. They go, yeah, Mike's dental floss is great. Help me. And you really work for Mike, or work for an advertising company for Mike's dental floss. So, like, I get what they're trying to do, but this is a really tricky problem to say, like, how do you know that a piece of content is human generated, right? Because what stops you from logging in and then just copy pasting?
And I think that's what he's saying also, is that, okay, we're going to use AI just like with software. Like, we use AI to create. We just want to make sure that there's a human involved to some degree. But what is the human involvement? What do we want the human involvement to be? Is it really that there's an ass in a seat, like you said? Like, is that the determining factor, that there's somebody watching the screen? Is that what makes it human? Is that what makes it connected to somebody? Or is it that the person had some original thought or some idea? Like, what's the difference between sitting in front of the computer and pushing a button and putting your touch ID or your face ID and then having automation, but you're not really engaging your neurons, versus you actually have some meaningful thing to share? Or is it a matter of, like, scale? So I think that he's bypassing some of the actual critical thinking that we need to do about what kinds of participation gates do we want to have in a society to ensure that we have some meaningful ratio of human thought and human participation in the onslaught of AI slop.
Well, I mean, I think that it will come down to my personal theory. I think it will come down to reputation, and there could be some really, really poorly reputed humans who get filtered out, and some really poorly reputed bots that get filtered out. And effectively, the upvote mechanism should remain in place. And sometimes you may be upvoting a human, sometimes you may be upvoting a bot. But to say that the human's input in this forum necessarily has more value, I mean, it's not clear that that's true.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the other interesting thing is, if you were to go down the route of, you want to make sure that there's a human there at some point in the process, whether it's to create an account or to interact or to initiate some kind of an action in some kind of workflow. I mean, these are big problems we're talking about. Is biometrics the way to do so? And I guess like why we're resorting to that and why he said like, oh, it's interesting that passkeys require a presence is because captchas are broken now. Like captchas can be solved. So we're at a point where we're struggling to find ways to determine whether an action is being taken by a human or AI. And part of what I've been saying is really that's no longer a binary thing. Like we've become cybernetic organisms now. We are enhanced by AI, and AI is an extension of our actuator mechanisms where we can do things with AI, but it's still us doing them to some degree. But we have to kind of rethink the whole concept of a CAPTCHA. I think it's outdated. We have to look at degrees of participation, degrees of cognitive engagement, degrees of imbuing something with your personal values or perspective. And those are the things that matter. And it's not a binary, are you a bot or a human?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It seems like there's no good way around. If you want to go meet in person, meet in person. I mean, if you kind of can't have your cake and eat it too, with this, right? If you want to participate in a text-based medium on the internet, it seems really difficult to filter out bots, or not just filter out bots, but filter people who are effectively human conduits for bots, just copy pasting from ChatGPT.
Yeah, and one of the comments there was like, "Oh, gee, if only we could figure out like AI generated content," which is, I think, that's more of the issue. Like, if you have reply guy AI slop, there's just some LLM generated reply with zero input and zero original thought and zero contribution of value to the discussion, and is just being posed for engagement metrics and exposure and all that. What difference does it make if you're there to put your finger on a thing? Like the end result is still going to be slop, and you're going to have these mechanisms where, okay, here's your whole website slop generator, and just be there to sign in and put your finger on the Touch ID, and then we'll handle the rest. And have you gained anything of value at all by doing that?
Yeah. You could do. Here's the problem: is the second you hand out your identity, then you are trusting some system that is very hard to verify, very hard to understand. And even if they say what they're doing, which is they're only using it to prove that you're a human and not, they don't care which human you are. Well, how often do you see, in law enforcement, things that are used for things that they weren't originally intended to be for?
Yeah.
And so that's why you think about, well, what could this be used for under a situation where someone had a warrant or, I don't know, some mass surveillance program had access to it, or some other actor hacked into it. Here in Washington State, we have a big problem that there was some backdoor in our driver license online portal that people who knew about this were doing like identity theft. And there's some big lawsuit now because that was open for like a number of years and people were vocal about it.
The company I was talking about was, I just looked it up, is Cambridge Analytica.
Oh yeah, that was a big deal for a while.
Scandal in 2018, the improper harvesting of 87 million Facebook users without their consent. And Meta eventually paid $725 million to settle. Data leaks and mishandling, data scraping, password storage, third-party access, health of data. So, there is an established track record of this stuff being abused. and not being used in the way that it was designed to or said to be. So because of that, I also think it's just a terrible idea. As I was saying at the beginning, this is part of an overall wave that I'm seeing, an erosion of anonymity and privacy. Another thing that I saw recently related to this was, I don't know if it was Microsoft. No, it was some law that was passed in California. And like, I'm usually all for progressive California laws, but this thing was ridiculous, and it required age verification to use a computer, to use Linux, right? So like there's like discussions in the Linux kernel mailing list of like, well, okay, in order to comply with California law, we need to verify people's age now. And so there needs to be ways of doing that, like in a centralized,
In the kernel
standardized
level?
way. And this is going to make its way into the Linux kernel. You know, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Oh gosh. Well, okay. Here, I'm gonna put another comic. This will be familiar to a lot of people. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog, right? Peter Steiner comic, and this was the point, right? Now people want to know: are you a dog or not? Right, and this was from, I think, 1997, no, 93, in the New Yorker. Wow, he made $250,000 off of this thing. The original was sold for $175,000, setting a record for highest price ever paid for a comic. But anyway, the point is, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog, but they want to know if you're a dog. But what are you gonna do? And I guess, would you care if you were talking to a dog if they made a good point and helped you? I don't know.
Yeah. This has been an ongoing theme of discussion for Ubuntu, I think. And here I can share. I wish I had a screenshot of the actual discussion. But yeah, Fedora, Linux Mint, and Ubuntu, and the Ubuntu mailing list. Here we go. I'll share my screen here. You can see in all its glory, as is typical of a Linux mailing list discussion.
Oh, wow. Yep. Okay. Can you zoom in a bit or make the font bigger?
All right. So on the unfortunate need for an age verification API for legal compliance reasons in some U.S. states. This is this month, right? 2026 March 1st. So this is just 3 weeks ago. And people are talking about looking at OS vendors to comply and looking at age brackets that the user falls into, and CLI only installs and how to handle it from a technology perspective, and Debian and a hybrid approach, and including it in different dbus interfaces. And like, this is actually being worked at a serious technical level because of a new requirement. So like, and here's the laws. So I think this is a scandal. The fact that we need to have age verification signals in software applications and online services. I suppose there could be some value in that, but the abuse potential and the erosion of personal liberties that are involved in this, I think, are egregious. And so you start to see that pattern of requiring biometrics, requiring identity, requiring age verification, or all these little soft things that maybe individually don't seem like much, but the mechanisms through which they are implemented necessarily create an erosion of privacy, liberty, and anonymity.
It's excuse me. As we see more AI get into the forefront, unfortunately, it also empowers people to make these ridiculously draconian laws, because you can start thinking up things that are, oh, now we have AI, we could do this. So in my state, we just passed a bill that any 3D printer sold in this state needs to run its 3D printed files through some sort of database that can check whether it can print parts for certain dangerous objects. This is still a professional show, so be careful there. But because we can't print out parts for these dangerous objects, so someone thought that it's a great idea to send every G-code file through some central database. And starting in just under a year, any printer that is sold in this state will have to have some access to have to be whatever you're printing has to go through that database. I think that is insanely invasive.
Yeah, no, it's really hard to regulate technology, and of course, there's always this tension between security and privacy. And there's some quote by some famous founding father or something about, if you're willing to give up for the other, then you shouldn't, deserve either. I'm seeing even drones right now. Can't import drones in Colombia.
Oh, really?
In certain airports. I think it's like a temporary thing that is going to get challenged constitutionally. But right now, like in Medellin, you cannot, or Cartagena, you cannot import a drone there.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because there's some military aspect of, it's power, it gives people power. And so we want to limit and control people's power. And that's a slippery slope too.
I think the quote is effectively, to be paraphrasing, and it's Benjamin Franklin: those who give up essential liberty to purchase a little safety deserve neither liberty nor safety.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. And it's hard in practice, right? Because sure, you could, as a software engineer, you'd think if you had the real name and identifying data of every last piece of information that was ever in your hand, you had all the metadata you ever wanted about it. Sure, that makes life easy, but why would you want that? But I guess we don't think
and
that
a lot
way.
of people don't understand the implications of handing over your privacy and your anonymity, and they think that only if you have something to hide should you care about that. But that is an erroneous perspective. Like, you should be privacy first and anonymity first as a default, unless there is a reason to identify yourself. Otherwise, you are entering into a draconian state that also has enormous risk exposure. I mean, just to think about the web, like before we had HTTPS as a standard fallback and free certificates and all that, it was really easy for people to hijack your sessions if you were in an internet cafe. And so the fact that you want your login in an encrypted SSL session, it's not because you necessarily have something that you want to hide because you're doing something bad, but because nobody has any business snooping in on what's private and what's yours, or they might be able to usurp your identity and steal from your bank account, or hijack your social media accounts and use that to phish other people or extort them. And so, there are all kinds of reasons why you need to protect your privacy and you need to protect your anonymity and not have that be part of an attack surface. And part of that has to be, by design, having the right controls and security boundaries in place where you don't just, sure, I'll put my finger and I'll put my face on whatever all the time, and I don't know how it's being handled, and it's just what is expected.
Yeah, that's the real, I think, the part at the very end, right, where you just say, oh yeah, I'm just going to keep doing the Touch ID until all the errors go away. And that's not I don't know. It seems like it'd be a real shame if we lost all this progress that we could do in terms of automation and in terms of scale because of this. So I don't know. What audience? What do you think? If you were here, we got a couple people online watching. Please weigh in. Please ask your comments. What do you think? Are you happy? Imagine if your real name and fingerprint was tied to every bit of information that ever left your computer or every web request you ever made. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you prefer the nothing to hide so nothing to fear argument, or the encrypt everything? Because I mean, I'm not a privacy purist, I suppose, or definitely I make certain pragmatic trades. So I mean, my face is online, right?
Yeah.
I'm not some big blob of pixels.
Yeah, we're in the public sphere, and we have sacrificed some of our privacy and our anonymity, and not everybody is even comfortable with that level of things. But still, I saw one of the comments there. It was like 2010, don't share your private info online. 2026, scan your face to comment.
Yeah, that is. I don't like the kind of shifting of the Overton window, right? Like if you would kind of like, if you could somehow teleport back. I used to use Prodigy dial-up internet, and there's some great forums there. And then of course people remember like Metafilter. And if you teleported back 30 years and be like, you're going to be forced to like have your real name associated with this, that'd be bad. And not just that, like you want to give people the opportunity to make mistakes and grow up. And like, do I want? I used to use I had a big Ford pickup truck, and I was on like the Ford Diesel forum, and then do I think that every last thing I said on that forum as a 16-year-old kid was probably the smartest thing? No. Do I want to be held accountable for that? No. And I'm glad that is fading into the garbage bin of history, and you can kind of start again. And I don't like this idea that like it's like a one and done thing where it's okay, this is your DNA, right? This is Gattaca here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a complex issue, and there's definitely different perspectives that you can appreciate. Like, I can look at the importance of anonymity, and I've been talking about that. But you can also see the dangers of anonymity. Then you just have political misinformation campaigns, large-scale botnets. This has been happening for decades, and that's a drawback of not having human accountability behind the content. But it's like free speech, right? And the First Amendment, it has its limits, and you have to look at where you cause harm or danger. But you have to have in very high regard the freedoms in mind, and these are things that we should not relinquish lightly.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, I'm not a Richard Stallman. I don't necessarily practice this to the fullest extent. I mean, I've got an iPhone and other convenient devices. Well, but AI definitely changes the scale at which you can start to dream up surveillance things that are a bit unnerving, right? Like that's what we see with like the city of Seattle is having this big discussion over video surveillance at the moment. Mm-hmm. And what do we do with all that data? Because the assumption was, well, this stuff is expensive to like comb through thousands of cameras and all of this stuff, and so maybe you're not going to use it unless you need it. But well, maybe it's actually pretty feasible to deal with all this camera data and track every car everywhere.
I believe that. I don't know the current state of things, but you remember Edward Snowden and that whistleblowing of the programs that basically say everything is tracked, everything is monitored, everything is recorded. Not everything is reviewed, but retroactively, if something gets flagged and some process gets triggered, all the information is already there to take a look at. And it can be like so much more easily done now to do large scale filtering and searching and profiling and clustering and all that. So this is happening.
Yeah, and it's funny because I almost feel like in my head, like, well, I've got nothing to hide. I'm a normal guy, and I'm going to the grocery store in the park, and doing the school run. I've nothing. But if I wanted to drive to a sketchy area at 2 a.m, like, I don't want that to like. And I don't have any interest in doing that. But I don't know. But I don't want to like. I don't know. It would feel weird that like some other person has to know about that.
Yeah.
And again, I have no interest in doing that. I like my routine.
Well, I mean, there's this thing that happened recently, I'm thinking Instagram, where they kind of opted people in to sharing their location info. And so all of a sudden it enabled Instagram stalking. And it's the kind of thing where you might feel like, oh, I'm not an international criminal. I don't need to hide my location. Like, oh, but do you want that to be publicly available to maybe some person that is some obsessive stalker now know exactly where you are? Like, that doesn't seem safe. That doesn't seem necessary.
Yeah, there definitely people do get fixated from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think this has been an interesting discussion. I hope our audience weighs in. Anything else we should share for tonight's stream?
No, I just wanted
Pretty
to
good.
react live to that breaking news because I just saw it scrolling by and I thought, hey, that's a big thing to think about and talk about and not know or care about because it's a sign of the times, and it's good to be aware of this kind of thing.
Did you see anybody react and say, yes, this will save Reddit, and I want Reddit to at least have the ability to know that I'm a real person?
Yeah, some people were kind of asking like, oh, are they the last bastion of human content in the dead internet? Like, maybe there is hope that there will be some positive result of that. And I replied by saying, but look at the implications of this kind of abuse, and then all the things that we've discussed around the limitations of its utility in the first place.
Well, I think that my message then is, if you're really, really concerned about whether you're talking to a human or not, then go down to your local coffee shop or your local bar and just introduce yourself, strike up a conversation. I think that's
up until
that's
the point
way to
where
do it.
we have replicants.
There you go. And then we'll have to have another test.
Yep.
All right, Leonardo, hope you have a nice evening, feel better. And
Thank you.
all right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.